Hi Biology, Mr. Wagner here. We're finishing up our notes on muscles. This is a section for 7.6 and 7.7. It's in your note packet. Again, your bones and muscles note packet, the same packet we've had. And this time we're looking at section 7.6. And it looks like that's going to start on page 20 and take us all the way through 23. Again, you're going to use this to help with your assignment that you have coming up. All right, let's take a look at what we've got. Muscle fibers. The actual muscle cell is called a muscle fiber. Endomysium, the tough connective tissue that surrounds the muscle fibers. Fascicles, these are bundles of muscle fibers, look like a handful of spaghetti. We'll see a picture coming up. And then the paramecium. This is the tough connective tissue that surrounds the fascicles. Anytime I have a MYS, mes or mysium, that's going to talk about muscle. And peri means around, like a perimeter, something that goes around an object is the perimeter. So the paramecium goes around and surrounds the muscle, the connective tissue. It's a tough connective tissue. The entire muscle itself is a bundle of fascicles surrounded by fascia. Fascia is a tough connective tissue that binds muscles together, also known as the epimysium. Two names for that, fascia and epimysium. And then a tendon, you've all heard of a tendon, like the Achilles tendon. This is made of the fascia, and it connects muscle to bone. Tendons always connect muscle to bone. Ligaments connect bone to bone. Ligaments connect bone to bone. Tendons connect muscle to bone. So here's what we look like. We talked about this thing of like stringy spaghetti. So there's the bone. Notice that there's the tendon that's connecting to the bone. There's the epimysium. There is the endomysium. Fascicles, the muscle fiber, the blood vessels, and the paramecium. So again, the three on the bottom, if you can't quite read them because they're cut off, it is tendon, that's the white part. The one in the middle is the epimysium, E-P-I-M-Y-S-I-U-M. And then the third one on the bottom that you can't see is called the endomysium, endomysium. Different pronunciations, you can use either one. E-N-D-O-M-Y-S-I-U-M, endomysium. Capillaries and veins, they run between fascicles, giving fuel and oxygen to the muscle. Again, the main point of our blood cells are to carry blood, and the blood then carries the oxygen. The oxygen is actually what's burned inside of the muscle so that it can function and move. Muscle cells, again, these are the fibers. They're surrounded by a cell membrane. They have more than one nucleus, rather unusual. Unusually large number of mitochondria. Why? Well, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That's what makes energy. And these muscles are going to be going back and forth, moving, flexing up and down all the time. So they need lots of mitochondria to make lots of energy. Myofibrils. These contain the contraction machinery. So in other words, the machinery that allows me to then, boom, contract my muscle. It's found in the muscle cell. Myofibrils. And you can kind of see what it looks like. This is cardiac or striated involuntary muscle tissue. And you can see, all of a sudden, you can see all those different nucleus there. And then the line pointing to what we were looking at. So the myofibrils, dozens or hundreds of myofibrils can be found in a single cell. Each one contains millions of sarcomeres. Sarcomeres. Sarcomeres are made up of myosin and actin, two kind of proteins. Myosin is a thick protein. Actin is a thin protein. And when a muscle contracts, myosin and actin work together to shorten a muscle like a winch and a cable. So my myosin, my actin, they go together like this. And when they latch on, they pull on each other and they pull it closer. So they're here, they attach and they pull each other closer. And if that happens millions of times, then that tiny little movement I had going from here to here, that tiny little movement of shortening happens millions of times and allows me to have this whole muscle contract the whole way. Sarcoplasmic reticulum and transverse tubules work together to trigger the myofibrils to contract. So the sarcoplasmic reticulum is a network of pipes that surrounds the sarcomere, and the transverse tubules, they connect the sarcoplasmic reticulum to the cell membrane. So here's kind of what we're talking about. So there's my nucleus. On the top, I've got myofibrils. I've got the tubules right there, the sarcoplasmic reticulum, openings to the transverse tubules. There's the mitochondria that are all around there, thick and thin filaments. There's a sarcoplasm, the sarcolemma, and the nucleus. All right, so in muscle contraction, it's caused by a motor nerves, which transmit signals to muscles. Neuromuscular junction, that's a place where a nerve, motor nerve, connects to a muscle cell. A neurotransmitter is a chemical that's released into the junction that activates the contraction mechanism. So I release that neurochemical, and it activates the thing saying you need to contract. This is kind of how it works. Here's my motor neuron. The synapse is a place between. And what happens is it releases all these little particles, and these little particles go into the muscle, and they trigger the muscle then to contract. A motor unit is a group of muscles connected to a single motor nerve. The purpose of a motor unit is to use less nerves and therefore make it more efficient. Dexterity, small motor unit, less muscle fibers per nerve. They are found in the eye, the fingers, and the voice box. Strength, large motor units, many muscle fibers per nerve, found in the quads, the biceps, and the pectoralis major. So anything with a large muscle is going to have a large motor unit. All neurons have 3 branches, controls 3 muscle cells at a time. All neurons have 6 branches, controls 6 muscle cells at a time. That's if I have A and B. When motor unit strategy allows more fine control, am I going to use A or am I going to use B? Hint, which strategy allows you to contract exactly 9 muscle cells if that is what is needed for a very precise movement? Place mouse over figure for answer. All or none principle. A muscle will completely contract and then completely relax when a nerve triggers it. It doesn't go halfway. It goes fully contracted or not at all. Now that doesn't mean every time I flex it that my arm goes all the way up here. I mean, I can take my arm and move it just a little bit. But what happens is all I'm doing, instead of activating all of the muscle fibers, I'm only activating some of them. I'm going to do just a few of them to go this way. But the ones that I do activate, they go completely. There's no such thing as a muscle or a muscle contracting halfway. Okay? Whatever the fiber contracts, it contracts completely. And if a fiber doesn't contract, it does not contract at all. So in this motion, I've contracted only about half of my muscles to move it halfway, but the muscles that I did contract, they went all in. Okay? This one, I'm using all the muscles going all in, all of them. For prolonged movement, motor units work in sync to keep a muscle contracted. Let's say I'm holding something really, really heavy and I got to keep my muscle contracted. They will work in unison with each other. Mature muscle cells will not reproduce if they are destroyed. Muscle tissue can be repaired if damaged. Hypertrophy is enlargement of a muscle through use. It gets too big. Atrophy is a muscle shrinking because of lack of use. At what age will some muscle fibers begin to shrink? Late 20s or early 30s. So again, atrophy, like if you have your leg in a cast, after a long, long time, that muscle will atrophy or wither away a little bit because it's not being used. And the same thing is if I use it too much, it'll hypertrophy or get overly big. The phrase use it or lose it could refer to muscles. If you don't use a muscle, you will lose it. There's 3 reasons that could cause muscle atrophy. Nerve that controls the muscle is damaged. A sedentary lifestyle, that means you're not doing a lot of movement. Or the muscle is immobilized, someone is wearing a cast. Those are 3 ways in which you can lose it. Define mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell, that's where ATP is made, our energy. Myoglobulin, this is a protein in the muscle that stores oxygen for later use. Myofibrils, they contain the contraction machinery of a muscle. Red fibers contain more mitochondria and myoglobulin than white muscles and less myofibrils. How does this structure affect what they do? Red fibers contract slower and with less strength, but they have greater endurance. What's another name for a red fiber? It's called a slow twitch fiber. Slow to contract, less strength, greater endurance. Red are slow twitch fibers. White fibers contain more myofibrils than red fibers and less mitochondria and mitoglobin. How does this structure affect what they do? White fibers contract quickly with a lot of strength, but become fatigued very easily or faster. Another name for a white fiber is fast twitch fiber. White fibers are fast, red fibers are slow. List 3 activities that would need well-developed white fibers: weightlifting, sprinting, and jumping rope. Again, these are all short bursts of energy that are needed. Muscles that require red fibers: running a marathon, jogging, cross-country skiing. So people that run a marathon have more red fibers in general than people who do weightlifting or sprinting. Those people usually have more white fibers. 3 benefits of exercise to your muscles: development of muscle cells, development of more blood vessels, and greater blood supply within the muscle. Define. These are all injuries that we can get. A strain. A strain is a tear in muscles or tendons caused by excessive force. Muscle fatigue. This is when large amounts of waste byproducts build up in a muscle, causing it to be stiff, sore, and difficult to contract. A cramp. This is a sudden, painful, involuntary contraction of a muscle resulting from a shortage of ATP in a muscle cell. Muscle tone. The state of slight tension in a relaxed muscle keeps the muscle from sagging